everyone. So
Hello.
we are back again. Hello, Kuya. How are you?
I'm good, Press. How are you?
Good. Been better. So this evening we have a special guest or special speakers. This evening this evening is about legalities, Kuya. So meron ka bang alam about sa mga ganitong bagay sa will or sa testament, will and testament or any legalities?
Greg, wala. Kasi artista tayo, di ba? So, wala. Wala.
Walang-wala.
Kaya
Kailangan
makikinig
talaga
ako.
natin ng lawyer, di
Makikinig
ba?
ako ngayon kina attorney. Oh.
Yes. Kasi dito sa Canada napakahirap when it comes to legalities. We have to know yung yung pinaka law dito sa Canada. I- Kasi to be honest, buying a real estate in Canada is different sa Philippines, 'di ba? Kung
True.
isipin,
Yeah.
ikaw, madami kang mansion sa Pilipinas. So, you can
Grabe.
you can actually tsaka meron ka ditong mansion din. So kaya mong i-compare, 'di ba? Yung process. Gaano ka-importante ang lawyer, especially talagang yung makakasama natin mga talagang expert mga 'to eh. Especially yung firm nila, sila yung pinaka well known sa Manitoba. They have different location here
Oh.
in Manitoba. And it's very kung pupunta ka sa mga small towns, Selkirk,
Mhm.
sa Morden, sa Winkler, you can actually see yung pangalan
Meron
nila.
silang branches doon.
Oo,
Oh, good.
sabi ko, wow,
At,
bigatin mga 'to. Pero and yung guest natin talaga, si Attorney Gary and Attorney Ren, they are well known sa Filipino community, especially in Winnipeg.
in Winnipeg.
And kamukha kapag meron kang nakausap na community leader in Winnipeg
Mhm.
and you're planning to have a organization or a foundation, first thing na sasabihin nila, oh, you have to contact Attorney Salcida or Attorney Mamukod. Sila yung talagang
Oh.
kilalang kilala. And to be honest, they are very di informative sila mag-explain. And nakilala mo na ba si mga attorney natin today?
Actually, ngayon ko lang sila nakita. At ang babata pa nila, no? Para ako yata pinakamatanda dito tonight.
Huwag mo sabihin ganyan.
Okay.
Pero and dito sa Southeast, sa region natin,
Mhm.
kung hindi mo alam, si Attorney Salcida ang lawyer ng SEMPA.
Yeah,
Yan
alam
yung
ko. Alam ko.
yan yung talagang from the start ng SEMPA, siya talagang humawak ng SEMPA. And we are very blessed kasi anytime we can actually email him regarding sa mga legal questions o concern natin.
I think puno yung inbox ni attorney from you, Press Greg.
Ayun nako. Baka nga
Parang
ang dami kong tanong. Napakadami kong tanong.
Pero ang maganda diyan kasi approachable sila, di ba? Ano?
Yes. And that is very important when it comes to finding the right lawyer. Kasi
Yeah.
siyempre para sa akin especially pag bago ka sa Canada.
Yeah.
Hindi mo alam yung paikot-ikot dito yung galawan. Sabihin natin galawan.
Yes, yeah. Tama, that's the right term.
Yes. So, of course, you have so many questions and you have to find the right lawyers to explain everything. And to be honest, yung lawyer ng parents ko din, si Attorney Salcida, sa bahay nila, he actually explained everything. Kahit yung mga cordon-cordon sa ilalim.
Oh.
I still remember when Attorney Salcida explained yung mga antag doon. Nalimutan ko English eh. Pero yun na yun. Yung mga MTS, mga ganoon. So, like, not all the lawyers will explain that. So, it's very vital talaga to have the right lawyer. Especially sa mga big purchases natin and big investments. And before we introduce them, and may mga bagay tayong pwedeng i-promote right now, Kuya. And right now we are partnered with High Life, right? Alam ng mostly lahat ng taga Stanback, they know na we are partner with High Life. So
Yeah.
they are asking our association to help them sa mga newcomers nila. So kailangan nila ng mga beds, mga
Yeah.
couches, and ang tawag dun, dining table. Kasi
Yeah.
uh, every year kumukuha sila ng 100 plus newcomers from the Philippines.
Wow.
And this is a
Yeah.
very, very important sa
Oo.
kanila. Kasi let's say last week, I saw their yung immigration coordinator nila, immigration settlement coordinator,
Oo.
actually nagkita kami sa Chinese restaurant, and she was on the way sa airport to pick up, I think,
Ilan?
5 people. Five. I think
Wow,
five.
okay.
So it's very vital right now kasi of course coming here without any relatives, they really need
Mhm.
support, right?
Yeah.
And of course, not only beds, couches, and dining table. Of course,
Oo.
they
Mga
need
furniture, mga startup things
startup.
na na hindi na nila
Ikaw,
kailangan bilhin
nag-donate ka, di
agad.
ba?
Oo, at saka para sasabihin ko lang to, Greg. Malaking tulong 'yun kasi sa part ng nagdo-donate or nagbibigay ng mga used na furniture, imbes ang hirap dito sa sabi nga ni Greg sa Canada, ang hirap magtapon or magtapon ng gamit kasi ang bigat, kailangan mo mag-rent ng truck. Pero pag nakita mong pwede mo pang ibigay at magagamit pa ng iba, actually bigay lang 'yun sa amin nung nag-start kami.
Oo.
So, thankful ako. Kaya shinare din namin doon sa newcomers ng High Life. At
Yes.
pinick up nila. So, hindi na namin kailangan
Magbuhat, right?
magbuhat. Oo,
Yes.
pinick up nila. So,
And last week,
magandang bagay
sila,
yan.
kasi spring right ngayon, di ba? So, of course, sa mga taong gusto magtapon ng clothing, winter clothing, wag nyo na itapon. I-ano na lang natin,
Pag pwede pang gamitin or ma-reuse kasi natutulungan natin yung mga newcomers at yung environment na rin.
Yes, tama. So, just contact yung Immigration Settlement Coordinator, si Marinel Santos. Just email her, and siya yung mag-coordinate sa
Nasa
inyo.
screen yung contact, yung email address niya. Yeah.
So, double check yung kailangan nila ay table, couches, and dining bed, couches, and dining table, and of course yung winter clothing nila, kasi of course
para ready sila next winter.
Ready na sila. And of course usually every month ata may dumadating so this is very
parang yung average na dumarating sa kanila nasa 5-7 mga ganyang group, no?
Yes, yung ganun kadami.
Ganun.
Then of course, wag natin kalimutan ang ating in-person concert. Wow, concert.
Oh, yeah.
Meron tayong music festival this coming May 13, 4:30 to 10 p.m.
Tapat Porter.
Yes.
Yeah.
And SEMPA members, meron kayong libreng raffle tickets. And of course, magkakaroon tayo ng vendors. So, bring cash kasi kailangan
may food doon,
may food doon. Then, meron tayong 50-50 and raffle prizes. And I think yung palisade mo, ibibigay mo din, di ba? yung palisade mo, bibigay mo.
Basta may kapalit Hindi. Clarify lang natin, yung mga nag-register, yung member na minention mo, Greg, yun yung mga nag-register, nagbayad ng membership fee noong Christmas party.
Yes.
Diba? At saka, so alam nyo, so kung sinong yung nagbayad nung December, nung Christmas party, or sorry, November last year, member kayo. So free yung entrance fee nung music festival.
Yes.
Yep.
And of course, may mga performers tayo. I think 10 performers.
Oh, dami na nga, no?
11, si Kuya sasayaw. So, si Vice President sasayaw. So, kayo. So,
Pwede. Sige. Without further ado.
Yes. So, but we cannot do all the programs and events without our sponsors. So, we have PKF, we have Gem Insurance and Red River Mutual, we have High Life and Co-op Clearview. And we are very blessed to have them and to be partnered with them.
Thank you.
And ready ka na ba, Kuya, mag take notes?
Oo, nandito na yung pen and paper ko.
Okay. Okay. So, yung guest natin, ano 'to, pangmalakasan mga 'to. Sila yung practice nila ay bankruptcy, insolvency, right kuya?
Mhm.
Ano pa ba kuya yung mga ano nila, yung
Sa
mga galawan diyan?
yung sa real estate din, 'di ba? Pag-purchase ng real estate.
Yes.
Oo.
So
Will. Yung
meron din
will.
silang commercial real estate and construction, cottage, vacation and home succession, and importante, tax planning. Yan ang pinaka
Na-mention mo ba yung will? Yeah.
will,
Yeah.
wills, estates,
Mhm.
trust, and elder law. So yung elder law, yung isa pang gusto kong malaman, ano ba yung elder law na yun?
Ngayon ko lang narinig yan,
Yun, hindi ko din
to
alam
be
eh.
honest. Oo.
Yes.
So
Then,
makikinig tayo kina attorney
okay,
at
tayo.
saka ilan na yung
Then,
viewers natin, Greg?
mga 11,000.
11,000. Okay, dami na.
11,000, ang dami na.
Pero i-check mo lahat yan. Maraming yayamanin yan kasi makikinig kina attorney.
Yes. So, i-ano nga kuya ay i-introduce natin ang ating mga speakers. Attorney Gabby Michael Sarcida and Attorney Renato Mamukod. Ladies and gentlemen.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome our special guests this afternoon. Hello, attorney.
Hey guys,
Good evening.
Hello kuya.
Gary, you're
Good
so
evening,
good.
good evening.
Good
Good
evening.
evening.
Magandang gabi or hapon sa inyo lahat.
Very
Ayun.
kind of you for the introduction.
Yeah, I don't know who paid you guys to say all those things. I'm sure I know it wasn't me. So no, that's very kind. No,
Yes.
I'd like to take this opportunity to thank SEMFA for allowing us to do this. Because as we all know, SEMFA is a great help to the community there in the Southeast. And anytime we are able to assist this way so that your membership and others gain more knowledge, it's all for the better. And as Greg mentioned, I think it was in 2004 that I first met a Filipino from Steinbach, and I didn't even know a person like that existed. Um, and then so from there, it was just a quick conversation with a few, and I've seen it grow to what it is now, which is incredible, and the fast growth, the fast collegiality that is still there, which is great to see. And you're making great inroads with the community that has been established there for quite some time now. So kudos to SEMFA for having these I guess it's a podcast, these talks. Because it's a great way to assist our fellow kababayan, right?
Yes, thank you so much po.
Thank you, attorney.
And disclaimer lang, right? They can comment us or ask question in Tagalog, right?
100%.
Oh yeah, we can.
We'll just have to answer in English, because if I answer in Tagalog, it will be here all night. But nintindi naman, Ren understands it. Ren was actually my student a few years ago, and so that's why he's gonna, we've trained him well. So we get him out of the office from time to time to do this. Just joking. But yeah, it's great. So I don't know, Greg, is it possible can we see the audience or no?
No.
No, okay.
No.
So because at any point in time, can they ask questions? Can they
Yes.
raise their hand or just interrupt?
Yes, I can actually ilagay sa screen
Okay,
nyo.
so
Yeah.
you'll merong notification if
Yes.
someone has a question. So to the audience out there, if you have any question, any thought, nothing here is embarrassing. There's no wrong question. Every question is a right question, and I know you wouldn't be here tonight if you didn't have a question. So we're here to help you. We're here not to just basically say things and then you walk away. We want you to basically come here and learn something from it, even if it's one thing. Then we've done what we were supposed to do for you. I know Ren has a PowerPoint, but that's just a starting point. And I want to make this kind of like participation friendly, because it's, well, I have a saying, we're only good lawyers if the client is also good as well, right? So, because if we're just going to just dictate to you, that makes no sense. Because we need to know what you want to hear so we can advise you properly, right?
Right. And everybody is different. Every family is different. We don't know what you guys are going through. We don't know what your concerns are. So the best way I think to approach it is, why don't we start with a template? So I'm going to go here. I'm going to share my screen. I'm wondering if it's okay. Right. So this was actually a presentation that I prepared for my church in Winnipeg. Uh, it is very basic because it applies to our members of my church had newcomers or people that have been there for a long time that didn't really have an idea on how wills work. So this is a good setup for them. So we do want to give you a caveat though. When you're talking about wills and estates, of course, we're talking about life or death. This is sensitive and a little bit awkward at times when I just say things directly. Or I'm just going to say, when you die, I don't want you to get offended. I know you're going to live for 100 years, but this is just so to make the presentation shorter. So,
well, and Ren, and sorry to interrupt, but really, that is one of the most common reason we see why people don't want to do this, right?
yes,
Especially in our community, our thinking, right? Our culture.
I will
No
go.
one wants to talk about the, kung patay na, right?
mortality is an awkward topic, of course. You
Yeah,
don't talk about it
and
until you
people
have a lot of
always
gray
say,
hairs.
right? People always say it's bad luck to talk about it, right? Ren and I will agree, and will tell you that it's bad luck not to have this done.
Yes.
It's a much worse scenario for you as a family if it's not in place.
So these four things are the most common documents, right? It's your will, which occurs when you pass away, a power of attorney while you're alive, a healthcare directive when you're in the hospital and you can't make decisions for yourself, and of course insurance. Everyone's well aware of insurance because we all have to be insured if we drive. Very similar, but this time it's insurance for your life, right? So effective dates, like I mentioned before, power of attorney is only good while you're alive. So is the healthcare directive. The moment you die, all those documents are voided and of no effect. Your will would then take over, right? That's very similar to an insurance designation, because an insurance policy is essentially a contract where a company will give you money if an event occurs. And that event is normally your death or an injury or an illness, right? So you have to ask yourself, and hopefully you'll know the answer by the end of this presentation, do you even need a will? Because some people may not, all right? And you have to ask yourself, what happens to all my assets, my stuff, my Palisade, all right? Where will that go when I die? So here we are. But I want to define a few terms first, because I'm going to be using words to make sure that you guys don't get lost. When I say intestate, under the law, that's just a person that died without a will. They never got the chance, or they didn't want to do it, or for whatever reasons, no will. That's a person that's intestate. When I say estate, that's all your stuff, including your rights that you own at the time of your death. So if you die without a will, you're considered intestate, and all your property and rights, that would be your estate. And that's what we're talking about to distribute, right? And of course, you can imagine estates differ depending on the person. So where will my stuff go under the Act? When I say under the Act, I'm only talking about Manitoba. Every province is different. So in Manitoba, if I die and I leave behind a spouse, my wife, or common law partner or husband, depending on your situation, it'll all go to your spouse, automatic, right? Your spouse would have the right to it. But what about some kids? And we're only talking about biological kids. They'll still go to your spouse. Hopefully you and your spouse get along, right? And remember, we're only talking about death without a will, okay? We're relying on the law to distribute your stuff. What about a spouse and biological kids? This is what it says under the act from a different spouse. So 50%, whichever is greater, will go to your spouse, and 50% remainder of your estate after the allocation of the share provided by to your spouse will go to your kids from a different spouse, right? So there is a weird formula that occurs there. So effectively, your biological children from your first wife will only get 25%, a 25% aggregate, really. And it may or may not be fair depending on your situation, because a lot of times when this happens, some of your kids may already be old, maybe they're not in need, or etc., or it depends on the family. So you have to think about that. What about no spouse, but you have kids? Maybe your spouse died first. Then it'll go to your biological children equally, right? And I have to emphasize biological children only. Step kids, people you bring in from the Philippines that are your nephews or nieces, and you consider them your kid, under the act, they get nothing, right? Of course, it will depend on the ones you leave behind if they agree to give them something. But if you're strictly following the act, stepkids get nothing. No, what about if you die? No spouse, no kids, but your parents are still alive. Of course, to your parents equally. And these are your biological parents, right? Not people you grew up with that you considered your parents, but are not your biological parents. No spouse, no kids, no parents. So where does it go? Well, to your parents' children. So essentially your siblings, right? Assuming that you have siblings, and that's for all of your parents' biological kids. So it'll be your siblings, your step siblings, the like, right? You can probably notice a pattern when I'm talking about this. Blood relations is what counts. And that may or may not be a problem depending upon your situation. So again, what about if you die? No spouse, no kids, no parents, no siblings. It goes to your grandparents, assuming you have grandparents that are alive. What about if you have no more grandparents that are alive? Then it'll go to the children of your uh, grandparents on your father's side and to the children of your grandparents on your mother's side. In other words, your biological uncles and aunts, if that's where you want your stuff to go to, right? What if you die and you have no living relative or next of kin? And this happens a lot more common. It's a lot more common a scenario we find because, for example, somebody dies here in Manitoba. Everyone is in the Philippines, but the people they leave behind here are not their relatives, and they don't really know who to contact. What happens to their stuff? Normally, if it's household goods and it's not worth a lot of money, it's kept by friends and relatives, and nothing ever comes out of it. If it's actual dollars that are liquid, somebody has to ask the court where to go for advice. 9 times out of 10, the judge will say, find out in the Philippines where these people's relatives are, contact them, ask them if they want a part of a share of the estate. And if they don't want it, you can pay it into court and you can just wait until they come out of the woodwork. That's what happens, right? But I want to emphasize what I'm talking about when I say distribution. This isn't automatic. These are just rights. Someone still has to do the work, right? So keep this in mind before we get there. These are automatic rights to the stuff, necessarily automatic delivery of the stuff, right? Just because you're related to them doesn't mean you're going to get a check right away. There's still work to be done. The second thing I want to point out, these are percentages that are set. Sometimes people may say, oh, you know what, I like this relative, but I'm not so friendly with that relative. Maybe they don't need the money, etc. The people you leave behind can't change that. That may be an issue for you guys. And the other thing you got to think about, your friends, stepkids, a charity that you'd like, your school, someone you know from work that you want to give something because you had a relationship, or they treated you nicely when you're alive, or they helped you out when you first came to Canada. they get nothing, right? Only blood relation counts. So now you're probably sitting there thinking, oh, yeah, I think I need a will. So what should I start thinking about, or what should I prepare before I see a lawyer or something? Okay. Number one, we got to talk about executors, assets, how to give away your assets, guardianship for kids, and I'll give you a handout. I'll give it to Greg. He can email it to you guys. So this is what executors are. This is the person that will do all the mental and physical work of cleaning up of what you leave behind in your estate, right? You have to find all your bank accounts. They have to check all your land titles documents. They have to collect all the monies that's owed to you. That's a lot of work. The average time frame for executor from start to finish, if they do it normally without any major problems, is about 2 years. So from start to finish, and never mind the grieving, never mind the infighting, never mind how to deal with all the utang. It's all of this takes time. So you really got to ask, who you got to think, who should this person be, right? We do have some parameters. Of course, you have to be 18 years old, uh, you know, but they can't be too old because there's a lot of physical work that needs to be done. They don't have to be related to you, but it has to be someone that you trust, someone that will do this because they believe it's right, or someone that will do it because they believe they owe it to you on a moral basis, and preferably someone that can actually physically do it because they live here in Manitoba, right? It's hard to pick somebody from the Philippines because how are they going to come here to contact all the bank accounts and all that stuff? It's very difficult. If you don't have one, you can hire. If you don't have a friend or a relative, you can hire a private one, like the public guardian or trustee can be retained as an executor, but they charge a fee. The ballpark for a fee of a private executor is about 3% of your gross estate. So if the value of your house is $500,000, 3% of that is what they would charge to act for you. So you should think twice, okay? And have a list. Have a list of 3 potential people that you can appoint. And then once you've determined that, it's time for you to consider and account for all the things that you actually own, right? And I'm talking do granular things that you own, like jewelry, household items, land, a car, etc. But you should always keep this in mind because there are some issues that may pop up, and we'll go through them one at a time. So here's one. Determine if you actually own the land. And this is very common for those of us with land in the Philippines, right? Is there actually a title to this land, or is it ancestral land? Or maybe you guys are still fighting about the land. You need to answer those questions. Then secondly, is that asset that you believe you own, is it jointly owned with someone else? Because if it's a joint bank account, a car that's jointly owned, or even a house that's jointly owned, under Manitoba law, the moment that you die, the last person standing that's a joint owner will keep it all, whether it's in your will or not. It'll go straight. So that's a thought that you should have. So that's why I'm sure when you met Gary to talk to you about buying your land, he asked you this question, right? There's 2 ways to hold land in Manitoba. Joint tenants, which is very common for husband and wife, where 2 people own the property together, and if one dies, the owner left alive will automatically get it. Or tenants in common. That's when the title is already divided ahead of time. And it's very common for parents who want to be on the mortgage to help their kids finance the purchase. They're usually tenants in common. It's also very common for siblings that buy a house together, right? And if that person who has a percentage of the title passes away, their percentage would go to their estate, and they can pass it down in their will if they wish, right? So that needs to be considered, because if it's jointly owned, you can't transfer it under your will. There may be a conflict there, so we should think about that.
Yeah. So Ren, just to add to that, and you're right, it is a question that I do a lot of the closings for our kababayan there in Steinbach, and so I always tell them that, okay, what if you and your husband or wife are on that plane going back home for a balikbayan trip, and of course the house is owned jointly, and you have two kids, for example, and you want to, you intend for it to, basically go to them, but the will is going to dictate that. So you're not going to be in a position where you're going to rely on legislation as to where, the ownership of that land is going to go, yung bahay nyo. So it's usually, and Greg knows this, and I'm sure some in the audience know this who I've dealt with already. Usually when you buy the house, your next step is actually to go see a lawyer and do your will, because you now suddenly have your largest asset sa pangalan nyo na, right? And so now you have to decide where it's going to go if something should happen to both of you.
So also, the next thing you should keep in mind is your insurance policies, and these are a lot more common because there's private insurance, insurance through your work, or through your pension, or maybe there's some kind of RIF or an RRSP that may have a beneficiary designation. Those designations when you sign with an agent and appoint a beneficiary, those things are done are distributed automatically when you pass away, right? So they're given to the beneficiary without that item being in your will. It's straight. So if you're going to make a will and you want to say, oh, in my my insurance policy, I want it to go to my daughter or my son, you got to make sure it matches, because if there's a conflict, it can become an issue for the beneficiaries, because the rule is the last document you made is what's followed under the law. But before you even get there, of course, there might be a lawsuit, etc. So it's better that you just double check it before you even include that in your will. Okay. Now, let's get to the good part about actually giving away your stuff. All the treasures that you've accumulated throughout the years. This is how it normally goes. Of course, your executor, the person that's alive, they have to pay for all your utang first. All the utang has to be paid. But there's an order to that. Number one, of course, funeral costs. That's usually paid up front by somebody, maybe the spouse or a relative, and then you would have to reimburse them later. That needs to be paid out first. And then taxes, and then the utang that's in your name. Okay? So credit card debt, a mortgage maybe, or a line of credit, those need to be paid first. Once those are paid, and then there's more stuff to give away, that is what your executor will be giving away. If there's not enough to cover all the utang, because it's so much, etc., then the estate would just be insolvent, and there would be nothing to give away to the beneficiaries, because your executor is only giving away what's actually there, right? They're not paying out of pocket. It's only what you leave behind, right? So, but let's pretend that there is a lot of stuff to give away. What happens next? Before you do that, pause first and think about this. Who are your dependents, right? The people that are actually receiving help from you, because you may want to know and consider how they would feel or how they would react if they get something or if they don't get something. And I'm only talking about dependents that you regularly help, not friends. I'm more talking about minor children or a brother or a sister that you're actually paying routinely. And also, with regards to gifts, you don't have to wait until you die, right? You can give them today if you really want to prevent a fight. Tell everyone, and then just give this away. Also, this is a common issue for a lot of people. When you're going to give a conditional gift in your will, be careful of what your conditions are, because some conditions are not legal because of policy reasons. I'll give you an example. Conditions on land, because you may consider it as ancestral land, our first land in Canada, and I don't want my son to be able to sell this or anything along those lines. Those conditions, not allowed, right? Conditions that are against public policy. For example, my daughter can have my land so long as she remains unmarried. or things that are blatantly cruel. For example, so long as she doesn't marry a person from this race or something like that, it gets shaky, and it could be set aside in court. So please be very careful.
So, Red, basically, it's I always tell my clients at this point, it's you can't govern from the grave.
Yes. And let's just be clear. It's make it precise, right? Like it's to my daughter, when she turns 25, she can have this money or something along those lines. It can't be for as long as she needs it, right? Or it has to be a precise definition. The other thing you should think about is if you have young kids, what happens if you and your spouse are no longer there? Who's going to take care of them? Or if it's not about young minor children, what if it's a disabled child? Then it can become very complicated. So we may have to design a trust or a clause or guardianship for the people that will be responsible to take care of your minors.
Yeah, and to be honest, the minor thing with guardianship is probably going to be the most important decision you're going to be making as parents. Forget about, I know it's important, the finances, the property, upon, when you pass away, but I've always found that this would be the toughest question or issue for my clients who are parents to decide on, right? It's because remember, you're not here anymore, and who is going to raise your child, who is going to ensure that they are taken care of. And usually, of course, there's the maternal side and the paternal side, right? And for a lot of parents, it's difficult for them to decide who, right? And so this is an area that I always find clients to struggle with, but it is a necessity to have, because especially if the kids are minor, or as Brent said, if a kid's true dependent because of disability or something like that, this wish or this intent by you needs to be crystal clear.
And of course, it has to match, right? Because whatever you put on your will, let's assume your spouse will be a bullet point the same person.
Correct.
So
for mom and dad.
For mom and dad. So things to note, though, and most people don't really turn their minds to it. Your contents of your will is confidential to you, right? The details, why you did it, why you're giving this to somebody, you don't have to disclose that to anyone. It can wait till you pass away, right? So you may be able to avoid awkward conversations there. The second thing you should keep in mind, you have to be mentally capable of doing this. This process requires a lot of tough questions. And if you're not mentally capable because you have Alzheimer's or starting to form dementia or whatever other reason, you may not be able to legally make a will, right? And again, this is an emotional process. It can cause family division, and it can be generational. So you have to play it as best you can where it doesn't cause any emotional damage. And then lastly, the will isn't a place for burial request. It's usually too late. Normally, the process we found here in Manitoba, at least, when you pass away, people grieve you, they bury you, and then they talk about the will, right? Unless you have extremely, greedy relatives, where the first thing they ask when they hear that you died, that is there a will? Which can happen. Who knows? People grieve very differently, but normally it's too late. So, so if you have any burial request, you should probably tell the people you're gonna leave behind what they are ahead of time.
Right, and so go back to that. You actually go to the next one, because I think it's the most important one here too, is that the mental capability of making a will. I know Ren and I have been discussing this for a long time. We always get not a week goes by where someone would call us and say our relative needs a will or another testamentary document. And the first question we usually ask is, do they have mental capacity to understand what is going to be undertaken? And many a times, usually it's too late for us to help the family, because that person they're talking about is no longer capable of giving us instructions. They won't understand what is going on. And so then the plan that the family had is now suddenly turned upside down. And then we present them with options how to get to, from point A to point B. But more than likely, it's going to be time consuming and very, very costly. And there's no guarantee either that that plan will work. So being mentally capable is really key, and doing it at the right time, not waiting when it's too late.
Yes, and remember, it's one thing to be mentally capable. It's another to be able to express that to the person, to your lawyer that will be creating your will. Because I recall um, being asked to come do a hospital visit, and the person that wanted to create a will could no longer speak or move. She was completely paralyzed, and only the muscles on her face could move, and that's how she communicated with her husband. But you can imagine they may have developed a system throughout the years, but I certainly couldn't communicate with her that way. So it can get very complicated because the baseline knowledge of what you need at that moment in time that you meet with a lawyer is, of course, you need to know what you own, right? Who you're going to give it to, uh, why you're giving it away, and who you're going to entrust to do this. That's just the threshold. And as long as you can do that, you're going to be okay to make a will. And I emphasize this: you make a will for yourself. Your kids can't do it for you, and you can't do it for your spouse. It has to be you to give these instructions because it's your stuff, and no one else can, provide any input to the lawyers. It wouldn't be valid at that point. Okay. So that's really the basis. Those are why testamentary documents are important. If you guys have any questions, feel free to ask, or if there's any issues that we may have glossed over too quickly, happy to hear them. If you're too shy, of course, our emails are there. It's confidential instead of having it in a forum like this.
Yeah. And Ren's only touched on the last will and testament. And we haven't even touched on the power of attorney or the healthcare directive or a special power of attorney for a limited purpose. This is an area, and I know there's the comment earlier, what is elder law? And it's related to that, because now with the power of attorney, because remember, your will is only a piece of paper. It's only a document that has no force and effect until you actually pass away, right? It's conditional that you have to pass away. So what happens if you are incapacitated, but you're still alive, right? And the most common, fact scenario we get is that, someone has dementia, right? Or there's a stroke, and, that person is still here, but all their things are in their names. It's not jointly owned. And then, we usually get a call from a husband or wife saying, I need to access my spouse's bank account. Banks won't treat you equally because the name of the bank account is in the name of your spouse. So the question is, do you have a power of attorney? That's what a power of attorney does. It's like they place you or the person you appoint in your shoes in order to act for you financially and for personal care if necessary.
And that gets very expensive as well. And I know we just glossed over it. The cost of a power of attorney is what, $200-300?
Yep.
If you don't have a power of attorney and you need one to do something involved to it, and your spouse or the person or your parents are no longer mentally there, what you need is a court order to appoint you to be the person in charge of their stuff. The legal fees involved in something like that is a minimum of about $2 to $3 grand.
I'd even venture higher these days, around 5,000.
Yes,
you would need to get the consent of all the next of kin.
Yes, and that's really why it gets so expensive. So I'll give you an example. Let's say my dad and my mom are still alive, and my dad owns everything under his name, and he doesn't have a power of attorney, and he gets dementia. My mom doesn't know what to do because she doesn't speak very good English. And my mom says, okay, son, you go help pay for your dad's bills, access his accounts. He doesn't have a power of attorney. I have to apply in court with an affidavit, a support of all my siblings and my mom, I need medical proof that my dad has dementia. I need an
You need two
affidavit
doctors. You need
from
two
two
doctors.
doctors.
Yeah.
So I have to actually chase down the doctor, get them to make an affidavit, and then I need a second doctor to do the same. And then we have to go in front of a judge to convince the judge that my dad has dementia and that I'm a trustworthy person to take care of his affairs. And then the judge will give me a court order. And by the time that's all done, your legal fees are through the roof. You can imagine how expensive that gets. And that's only on the assumption that nobody will say no to you. Because imagine if I had a sibling that says, no, I want to be the guy in charge.
Yeah. They
I
don't
was closer to dad.
Yeah.
Right? Like,
and that's only the tip of the iceberg too, right, Ren? Because what
Yes.
happens is you're appointed to be the legal authority over someone, let's say over your dad. The court order will still specify you to do an inventory of all the assets of your dad later on at a later date. See, the legal work does not end just because you're now appointed, right? You have to account for it according to the order of the court. So that's why I'm saying, yeah, you can probably get the order to be appointed probably for about $3,000 or so. But then the other work afterwards, if it's necessary by court order, it could keep on going. It could be ongoing for a long time, depending on the lifetime of the person you have legal authority over.
Yeah, the accounting.
Yeah,
because the accounting can get very expensive.
Remember, it's just because you're the legal authority, the accounts don't belong to you. You're just the trustee of it. So at the end, it's quite important. These things do get complicated, and like attorney said at the beginning, each family or each individual is different, and each testamentary planning is going to be different. And everyone will say, well, no. The most common thing I get is that, well, attorney, we only have a house, we have a life insurance policy, we have cars, bank accounts, joint, right? And then, we have personal possessions, jewelry, etc. Nothing much. I have a saying, though, when you do pass away, you're much more wealthier when you really do an accounting and inventory of all your assets. So, for example, this pen, it might be worth 25 cents, but it's worth 25 cents, right? And so when you look around your house and you look around your investments, etc., add it all up, and suddenly, more than likely, your assets of your estate is going to be much more than actually what you owe to creditors. And what assists that definitely is, of course, joint ownership with certain people and insurance policy, so you can pay those debts. And then suddenly, when those debts and creditors are out of the picture, you suddenly have this large pie of assets that you never contemplated that you actually had, but now suddenly needs to be distributed to your beneficiaries or next of kin. So this is where that will comes in, and where you now have controlled where you want it to go, instead of relying on the act or the legislation as to how it's dictated, right? So any questions for that, Greg, from the audience?
I have some here. So there's a question. What happens if someone dies? Hindi ba mawala din utang?
No. We all wish that, right? You are 6 feet under the ground, and the tax man is still like this. The car loan is still like this. The mortgage is still like this.
Attorney, sorry.
Yeah.
Follow-up question before you continue. Sorry. How about if the mortgage is insured?
Yeah. So that's why I say where insurance comes into play.
Okay.
Because if there's insurance on, let's say, the car loan or the mortgage, that gets paid. So that's gone now, right? Because creditors also know that when you pass away, you're much more wealthier. You see? That's why they're not going away.
Yeah.
In fact, if you notice in the local paper at the Carillion, take a look one day, okay? And then go to the page of the classifieds, and you will see there for sure, notice to creditor, right? That is lawyers placing an ad on behalf of a state, asking the world, okay, pronouncing to the world, if anyone has a claim against this person or this estate, they must contact us, our office, within 30 days, right? Because we are now assisting a family or an estate to be settled, right? That's one of the final steps before any distribution of the estate is given to any beneficiary. We will never give it out until, number one, we've done that. Number two, we have a clearance certificate from the CRA. CRA is always going to be there, guys. Okay, you know what's the guarantee? Death and taxes. It's
Death and
absolutely
taxes.
true. It
Yeah.
is absolutely true. You know, if you take a risk if you distribute without getting a clearance certificate from CRA. So that's a very good question.
There's another one. Anong unang binabayaran? Mortgage, credit card, or loans?
Ren, you want to take that one?
The first thing you should pay
Mortgage,
for,
right?
well, no, the first thing you should pay for after you pay for your funeral expenses
Oh yeah.
is your mortgage. And remember, you don't have to pay your mortgage off right away. Because
Right.
if you don't pay that mortgage, you're gonna get foreclosed and you lose your house. The next thing you should pay for is anything that has a high interest rate, of course, because that'll eat into your equity. But then it really is the better question is this: do I have to pay that debt? Because this happens sometimes. I'll give you an example. The most common one is this: husband and wife are newcomers in Canada. They own a house together. Husband and wife have separate credit cards, right? And they have their own utang because of XYZ reasons. But when husband, and they don't have a lot of assets, when husband dies, because the house is jointly owned, the house will go back to the spouse, the wife, let's assume. But the husband left behind, he never left behind any assets, but he left behind a lot of utang. The question becomes from the wife, do I have to pay that utang? Right? And my answer normally is, unless there's any assets to distribute, you are not obligated to attend to that estate and pay off those debts, right? If that utang is only in the deceased person's name. Of course, if you're the guarantor of that utang or it's a jointly held card, you're now responsible for it. But if it's just in their names, you have to do an academic exercise, because if you step into the role of the executor, you got to ask, is it worth it for me to do this? Is there any assets to distribute? Because if there isn't, it's just entirely utang, then our advice has always been just leave it.
Yeah.
It's not, you don't inherit utang.
Okay.
It goes into the estate. It's not something you pass on.
Yeah.
Okay?
And one more. What is probate and how does it work?
Very good question, and I'm gonna try and give you an uncomplicated answer. Okay, so you have a last will and testament. Probate is the process where there is court approval of that last will and testament, giving legal authority to the executor to act on behalf of the estate and to finalize and settle the estate. So the process is that the original will, okay, that's, I'm not going to get into complicated if we can't find it or if it's a holograph will or along those lines. So we have an original will. We filed paperwork with the court, in order to request that probate or legal authority be granted to the executor, to the named person who will be in charge of the estate. The executor will be swearing that they will fulfill the obligation according to the wishes of the deceased person. And they will do an inventory. See, this is why it's always about, that pie I said earlier, right? They will do an inventory of the assets of the estate because you have to declare it. You have to declare how much this estate is worth. Because it's important, because when you pass away, a snapshot is taken of everything, right? The valuation, etc., of how much is in the bank account, how much is in that, in RRSP, if there's no beneficiary, that TFSA. Whatever it is, a snapshot is taken because you have to list it. And then so when probate is completed, there's a court order saying that this person is now the official legal authority or executor of the estate. And then you can now take that document and now you can go to the bank. You're going to open up an estate account because now you are going to start gathering physically, right? Physically, the assets of the deceased. You will be in charge of potentially selling the home. And then liquidating any other assets like cars, personal possessions. Sometimes you drive around Steinbach and you see garage sale signs, right? Do you sometimes see estate sale signs?
Mm-hmm.
That's what the family is doing or the executor is doing. They are liquidating the assets to, number one, see if it's needed to satisfy debts and creditors, but more importantly, it's being done to ensure that it's an easier way to distribute the estate, right? So, for example, you have that 52-inch TV, and there's 4 anak who are going to inherit it. Are we gonna cut up the 4 52-inch TV?
Yeah.
Ways? No, we're
Good
not gonna do
example.
that. We're gonna sell it for whatever we can get for it, right? Because it's easier to distribute in terms of it. And then finally, like I said earlier, I'm going through it very quickly, but there are nuances for everything. Is then basically having to file the last tax return of the deceased. That's going to be the responsibility of the executor. And then requesting that and making sure everything's paid, right? There's no more tax liability. And then ensuring that that clearance certificate is received by him or her, by the executor, so that finally then you can distribute to each beneficiary. So let's say, for example, those 4 kids, 1/4, 1/4, 1/4, so 25% across the board. But then again, see, we could get very complicated, but I don't want to. Remember, those 4 beneficiaries have to consent to that distribution too at the end, because you have to account for everything, where everything goes, right? So it's quite becoming an executor, and once you have probate, is as Attorney Mamukad said, it takes a long time, and it really is a chore. It's like a second job, with the amount of work that you have to do. But remember, someone has to do it, or that nothing moved, right? Everything's left in limbo. Then suddenly those 4 kids get nothing until someone acts on it. You see, so it's very, very important to get it done.
Okay. Okay. What is the difference between will and testament and a trust?
Bren, you want to take that one?
Yeah, the last will and testament is just your instructions when you pass away. A trust is more of a legal vehicle. It's not really an entity in the law, but it's more of a plan that gives instructions to a trustee on what to do with items. So, for example, think of it, if we're talking money, think of it like a bank account, and the trustee is the person that who has access to the bank account, and the terms of the trust is what you can do with the money. So, for example, if you're going to make a trust for your family members, the trust terms would be, trustee, you can invest this money every year on these certain kinds of investments, and every month you can give X amount per month to this child until they turn 26, and then when they turn 26 or 30, it's up to you, they can have the whole thing. Or if they're completely disabled, then trustee, take all this money, use it however you want, but you have to use it to take care of my disabled child for the rest of their life, to make their life as comfortable as possible. So a trust is really, just think of it as a legal plan, and you can't deviate from that. It's the legal plan that you're bound by if you're a trustee, and the person that receives the benefit would be the beneficiary.
Okay. And can you change a trustee when you name one already?
Oh yes, you can.
Okay.
It's very common because the trustees are only human. They get sick, they die. They can when these are designed, there's usually 3 appointed, one after the other. If person A can't do it, person B lives in Calgary, maybe person 3 can do it. It's automatic, and if there is no one left, then we can just simply apply in court for a court order to appoint somebody to administer the trust.
Yeah, I recommend to all my clients who do this to look over your will, your power of attorney, and healthcare directive every year, annually, when you do your taxes. Because, you never know. You might have a new child. You may have a new apo. You may have a fight with someone and you want to disinherit them. It happens. And in fact, it's funny too how people will call me 8 years after their second child was born and say, "Oh, we forgot to do this." But again, it's just make it a rule of thumb to review it on a regular basis, because attorney's right. That's why one of the important things that was said earlier on the PowerPoint was you got to choose your executors carefully. I personally like to recommend that you don't choose people who are older than you. You choose people who are probably in and around the same age as you, because you more than likely they will continue to be around when it's time, right? These are great questions, Greg, from the audience. It's like it's bringing, I know, Attorney Mamukad and I back to law school. But this is how you learn. Actually, this is what I find the best about these discussions is actually just real life examples and questions. Because we could tell you all. I'm sure we can be here all night giving you the horror stories of what we see on a regular basis. And the worst ones, like I said earlier, is where we really want to help the family, but we just can't. And we know that we can do it, but sometimes the families just don't have the financial ability to move forward with it, right?
Yeah.
And those are the worst ones, and sometimes we see the worst case scenarios where families are actually fighting with each other. Members are in terms of it, and only if they're if Lola or Lola had their wishes in writing, we wouldn't be in these positions, right? Because we also act for people who want to challenge what people think are their inheritance or mana, right? So Ren laughs always when I say this, and Greg, I don't know if I've ever mentioned this to you, and maybe some of the audience members are, money is thicker than blood.
Yeah.
When there's an opportunity for, we laugh, right? But there's an opportunity for someone to say, oh, I can probably get something from there just to be a nuisance.
There's another question, and it's actually related to that. So,
should we be careful with the example we give?
so if the property is in the Philippines and what is the proper legal alternative ways na maano nila
to deal with the property back home?
Yes.
You know what? My immediate reaction to that is don't wait until your parents pass away.
What if the parents pass away already?
Then you're in a whole host of trouble. No joke. No joke.
And think about this for a second, and this is the most practical advice that I normally give to my clients, because I'm in the same boat. My parents have ancestral land in the Philippines. Think about this. Number one, is it worth the bloodshed? Because there will be bloodshed when you're talking about land. Number two, are you even going to live there? Remember, healthcare in the Philippines isn't free. If you're only going to visit once every 5 years, is it worth the headache? Right? And then number three, like, how much is this land worth? It's not going to be worth a new house in Steinbach. Unlikely.
You never know, Ren, because I've had
you never know,
who suddenly realized that they had ancestral lands in the Philippines, and then it's actually worth a lot because it was getting repatriated by the local government who wanted to turn it into an airport. So suddenly what they thought was going to be minimal, right, suddenly turned out, when we calculated it with the exchange rate with the US dollar, over a couple 100,000 suddenly. So it really, again, but this just goes to show the point that each family's situation will be very different from each other. But I'm going to share you one story, and Ren's heard this before. So I had a client who his mom passed away, had lands, the titulos pangalan ng nanay, right? And then so he was the only kid dito, Canadian. He knew he was going to inherit everything according to, she died without a will. And so according to bloodlines, of course, the son would receive it according to Philippine law. We knew that, right? And so he went back home to deal with it, okay? He went back home, and then so it's a barangay nila. And then suddenly what happened was he was going up their driveway, or just a pathway back to the house. And yung tita niya said, you have to get into this car right away. Right away. She had her the suitcases were right beside the car. He's like, well, tita, what's happening, right? She's just get in the car. Get in the car. He gets in the car. They drive around the corner. He sees a motorcycle with two people, one on the thing, all in black.
Whoa.
Okay. And so what was happening was, he finds out later, is those people were probably there to hurt him, because there was a lot of interest from other family members who knew if he was out of the picture, they would share, right?
Yeah.
You see, it goes through blood.
Yeah.
You see? So
if they can eliminate him right there,
suddenly whoever is according to Philippine law will then suddenly inherit yung land nila.
What? Yeah.
right? And then this becomes such a problem because I know we all have relatives who live and maintain the land sa Pinas, right? Or we invest our own money from here. I mean, it's so common. We send money back home, take care of this, take care of that, right?
Mhm.
Yeah.
You really got to be very, very careful how that works out. So I always recommend to my clients, if your parents are still alive, and because if that this land, if it's going to be planned to be shared, or you you waive your right to it already. And Ren talks about his personal situation. When my parents passed away, I suddenly realized I was now like a quarter owner of land in Aklan, right? And then what was I going to do with it, right? So I literally just waived my right to it and say, here, take it to my cousins, because I didn't need to, and I didn't want the headache either. But it's a different scenario, different circumstances if it's worth a lot of money, or if you intend to live there, or if you invested money into it. So we can't give you like a real true answer to that, because like I said, it's very fact specific. But let me tell you, lands and jurisdictions outside of Manitoba becomes problematic, and especially in the Philippines, because you're dealing with two different set of laws, right?
So, another thing, Attorney Mamukod mentioned kanina about hologram, right? So if I mean like, someone is in the hospital, diba? So what if this person is paralyzed or nakakoma siya, right? So this person cannot talk or cannot do anything. No, not coma. Let's say this person can actually write something.
I think the
So
famous case that, to answer your question, there's a famous case out of Saskatchewan of a farmer who didn't have a will that was driving the tractor.
yes, I was trying to.
Yes, it's
Yeah, that one.
exactly
I know
that. I
that.
don't know, you
Yeah.
might have heard of that case, and the
Yes, I did.
tractor
I did.
flipped over,
Yes.
crushed him, and in his last dying moments wrote on the fender of the tractor, if
Yes.
everything goes bad, goes to my wife. Yeah, it's the case. It can be
Yes.
upheld.
Okay.
Um, it, it, it's two things that the law requires. Is your mind there to make that decision? And then number two, can you communicate that effectively in writing, either on your own or with somebody? Because we've had lawyers that we've had clients that were blind but can speak,
Mhm.
or we've had clients that can't speak because they're mute or deaf, but they can write. Right? It's things like that. What's required is your mind has to be
Okay.
there.
Yeah, deathbed wills are very. We as lawyers have to be very careful when we're going to go at it. And just to share, I know this is a different example than what Attorney Mamukad was saying, but I also had a client who was bound. He could not move his muscles. I remember I was actually quite taken aback when I walked into the hospital room, and he was standing up, but he was being held up by machines, and all he can move were his eyes, right? And so I said, do you know who I am? And I introduced, and I said, blink once or blink twice, yes or no. It became that type of scenario
Oh.
in order to determine if he was lucid enough to understand what I was doing there with him. And I thought from a legal perspective, he absolutely was. And just to cover my basis, I actually even asked the doctor in charge of him at that time if this is how they communicated with him when they were giving him his treatment, right? And they concurred. So I was comfortable enough at that point to actually execute that will. See, so again, every time there is, it's always different for every single person. That's why when the opportunity is there, when there are no complications, right, to take that opportunity and get these documents done up.
Okay.
Attorney, question lang. Magkano yung will again?
Okay, now this is the most famous question we always get when we do
Yeah.
these things. If you just want, well, let's just use generalities, okay? So if it's for a married couple, because usually that's the case, right?
Mhm.
If it's for a married couple, it's usually $925 for two wills. Okay?
Remember, this presentation is recorded.
Yeah, I know. Well, that's why I'm looking at our standard fee.
Yeah.
For power of attorneys, for two power of attorneys, it's $550. and for 2 mutual healthcare directives, it's $350. But if you want the whole package,
Yeah.
so you get 2 wills, 2 power of attorneys, and 2 healthcare directives. We never have touched the healthcare directive. That's for another time, probably. Is $1,600. I know it sounds expensive, right? But trust me, you're going to be paying a person like me more money to clean up if you don't have it in place.
Yeah, if you file it in court, right? If you don't
Yes.
have the right.
Correct. But this is our standard. I always use my discretion, and you're going to love this, that I make it a point to make it very affordable for our kababayan. Because I know this is a necessity for all of us. You just talk to me and you say, okay, this is my circumstances. I have no problem discounting it. I just don't know how much, right? Because it will depend on each person. And then we have payment plans as well. So don't feel scared of the price, because I will honestly tell you the price is going to be much, much more if you don't have it. And I know Ren kind of touched on this a little bit ago. You're doing it. Yes, I know you're kind of doing it for yourself, but you're also doing it for your kids. You're doing it for your brothers and sisters. You're doing it, right? Because you don't want confusion. You don't want friction. You don't want to cause situations where, your family's grieving for you, right? And then you're going to complicate things much more, 10 times worse if there's unattended legal issues to deal with, financial issues to deal with, right? So, like I said, we all don't want to talk about what would happen if I'm not here anymore. But really, when you think about it, that's going to be the most important decision you're probably ever going to make in your lifetime, is what will happen if I'm not here anymore. So I urge you, don't be dissuaded by the cost of it, because the cost of it is going to be a hell of a lot more if it's not in place. And I'll be honest with you, every year that passes, these prices go up.
Yeah,
it's just the cost of doing business. I mean, you can go to any and there's other lawyers there who will probably charge you less, but I would venture to say that I don't know if they'll take the same time and effort to go through something with it with you. It takes time. Like for my practice, and I know Ren, you can comment on yours, I will meet with you virtually or in person, either at the office or at your house. We will discuss the different options. I delve into your family life, right? I want to know everything about you as much as I can. I prepare drafts for you. You will review it. You will comment on it. I want you to ask any and all questions about it. You will not sign it until you understand everything regarding it, right? And then when you're finally at that point, we will then sit down to actually execute this thing. And so think about how long that takes, right? So it's unless it's urgent, like for example, I get clients all the time. Well, let me put it this way: I get a spike in business usually 3 times during the year. Number 1, right before summer holidays, because everyone's traveling. Number 2, right before Christmas holidays, because everyone's traveling again. And number 3, always whenever someone passes away, right? Because everyone starts to think about it. So don't leave this as a bucket list thing or something. I can deal with it later. If you have the opportunity to do it now, do it now.
Attorney, follow-up question.
Yes.
Sorry, Greg. Yung prices na sinabi nyo kanina, and then you also mentioned earlier in the discussion that make it a habit to like update you if there is a new child in the family.
Yeah.
So pag halimbawa I executed my will this today, and then we have another child next year, do we need to pay something to update it? Or
if it's a small change, I usually don't.
Okay.
It's usually a 1-pager normally.
Yeah, usually it's called, the legal term is called, it's called a codicil. It's like an amendment. If it's a major change where we have to change a whole bunch of different things, that's a different thing. Sometimes I even advise clients, let's redo the whole thing, right?
Yeah.
Because again, it's very difficult to say, like I can say, yeah, it won't cost you anything, but then you come
just
see
adding a name
are actually different.
But just adding a name,
yeah, adding a name
can
usually
take-
not, but
Yeah.
sometimes you may think it's simply as adding a name, because remember it's a domino effect, right?
Mhm, mhm.
Depending on how you drafted your will in the first
Yeah.
place.
Okay. Thank you, attorney.
That's a good question. I get that question actually every time I have this meeting. I have a meeting with clients. What happens? Well, here's the other thing. People always ask me, attorney, what happens if something happens to you? Well,
Oh yeah.
you
I'll
hire
take
me, you
over.
hire Ren, you hire the firm, right? So I'm not the only keeper of secrets.
And attorney, it's true, right? Like in the movies, some people are adding their pets to their will. Is this like in real life? Does this happen?
In-law pets are property. They are not personal. They're not individuals. So if you say I leave all my property to blank,
Mhm.
your cat, your dog, or whatever goes to that person.
Oh.
But you can specifically say, and I know we didn't touch on this, you can specifically say I leave my German Shepherd to someone, because you know they're going to be taking good care of that, your pet.
It's possible if you want to create a trust. So I leave $10,000 to Greg in trust to use that money to take care of my German Shepherd
Okay.
for
So
all
that
the care and
10,000 is
costs.
taken from that pie. You see
Yeah.
how it gets complicated very quickly?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so then let's say you had those 4 kids again as the example I was been using. That 10,000 is set aside just for that pet.
Yeah.
So that decreases the amount of the pie that your 4 kids are going to say. And then now what if one kid says, uh-oh, why is it going to my ate, not me?
Yeah.
Right?
So let's say meron kang, let's say for example, you have multiple properties. Can you assign a certain property sa anak mo?
Yeah, certainly.
So that's gonna be under the trust or under the
It's under the will.
under the will.
You can dictate which properties you want to go to whom.
Okay, and the trust is like if you have a trustee, yun lang yung magsasabi how much.
The person who has the legal authority over the estate or the trust
Okay.
will be there, because that's why you choose that person to act for you, right?
Yeah. Okay. Do you have any
So
question for me?
they have to follow the instructions that you have left.
Are the trustees paid, attorney?
You can make that as a condition of your will.
Oh.
It's not automatic, right? You can set aside 25,000 for your time, care, and effort to settle my estate. Some people leave a percentage, right? I leave 1% of the value of my estate to my executor for the time and trouble of handling it for me.
Mhm.
Some people leave nothing because they're already a beneficiary, right?
Yeah.
So this is what I mean why we would, this is a discussion that is fluid, because I would ask you these questions.
Yes.
I mean, we can send a checklist out, but sometimes I feel like the checklist, people just kind of get trapped into just answering those questions and we don't go beyond. I like to go beyond it, because you have to contemplate as much as possible when you're preparing this, right?
Yeah.
I mean, and Red kind of just touched it briefly. There's all the blended families, right? From separations to adoptions to, someone who you really, is not blood, but you consider them as family, right? So all that has to be in consideration, and touched on just briefly too. What if your child is disabled? There's another trust that you have to build into there, because you want to protect their government benefits. This is not a go to Staples and buy your will kit, which you can do, but I think most of the ones that I've reviewed, they won't contemplate all that. So it's a good thing to do, and I know I'm repeating myself, but if there's one thing the audience can take from this evening is that this is, I think, probably one of the most important decisions that you're ever going to make. It's right up there when you decided to move to Canada.
Yes. Attorney, there's my question again about the price. This one. How much po ulit ang cost ng last will?
Is it just for one person or a couple? Because if it's just for a single individual, everything is cheaper, right? It's almost like half price.
Okay. Yeah. Attorney, ako na answer.
Sige, go.
Okay,
Yeah.
kasi 925 for 2 for the will.
That's
550
for husband and wife. Husband and wife.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, couple
And
daw.
power of attorney is 550 for the husband and wife. And for the healthcare directive, was it 350?
350.
Yeah.
So in just general form, the healthcare directive is where you appoint a healthcare proxy to make decisions for you regarding
While you're still alive.
Yes, while you're still alive,
But
regarding your
incapacitated.
personal health care and healthcare decisions. Remember, your power of attorney deals with financial aspects, your banking, paying bills, etc. Right? So you absolutely need to have a healthcare directive too. So all three of those, the last will and testament, the power of attorney, and the healthcare directive, are what will be known as your testamentary documents. And again, don't be afraid of that price. I know everyone always thinks about, well, this is going to probably be one of the, other than buying your engagement ring or your house, it's probably the most important piece of property or document you're ever going to buy.
Para siguro, attorney, para may peace of mind ang
Oh yeah, absolutely. Like I said, it's the I always say to clients when I end the meeting, and maybe perhaps we can end the seminar here, is it's the security blanket you're leaving, right? It's like it's for your kids, it's for your parents if they're still around, it's for your close brother or sister. We never even got into, I leave my gold watch too, ganon. There's family heirlooms that you may have. I have family photo albums. And that was one thing when I first started law almost 20 years ago. People were always arguing about photo albums. Who's going to receive photo albums? Today, no one even talks about it because everyone just clicks and it's shared, right?
Yeah.
So it's those things. But, there might be something, it's not even financial value, right? It's just sentimental value that you want to leave with someone, or they would really appreciate it. That's taken out of that pie, right? And so it really is that security blanket, that peace of mind, as you say, where you're not going to be the source of problems for your loved ones.
Yeah.
How much ulit yung single? Sorry, may
Single?
question. Yeah.
Single will, is $575.
575.
A single POA, power of attorney, is $375. A simple healthcare directive is $225, and if you want the 3 package, it's $900 altogether.
Okay.
So if you get all 3, it makes sense, right? It's cheaper.
Yes.
But remember, there's also GST on top of that. Okay. See, the taxes guaranteed.
Access.
And I do recommend that we keep the originals here with us, so it's for safekeeping. We don't charge for it, because the originals are the ones that are going to count, right? We will send you notarized copies of the documents so that when you need it, it's ready to go, right? You'll have our notarial seal, stamp. But the originals, especially the will, is the one that's going to be needed when the time comes, right? So, but it's completely up to you. If you have a safety deposit box, if you have a fire safe at home, by all means, please keep, where you keep your most important. If you don't have one, that's another thing, that get yourself a firebox, put your passport in there, put your landing papers in there, insurance, and then your last will and testament along with your titulo sa bahay nyo, so that it's
attorney,
safe, right?
Attorney, question. So pag nakalagay yung mga important documents like yung will doon sa safety deposit box at saka hindi niya iniwan yung password niya, so sisirain nila yun?
Oh yeah. We'll hire a locksmith to destroy that thing.
Okay, yeah.
And then, because remember, look, we all do online banking. How would we even know the password to access? Right?
Oh yeah, true. Yeah.
So you need the legal authority, right? In order for people to start talking to you. Banks won't talk to you. Pension administrators won't talk to you. The government.
So it will start from the locksmith.
Yeah. Well, the locksmith's going to get paid, so they're going to start. That's one of your funeral testamentaries. Yeah.
And I still remember yung sinabi mo before sa parents ko, attorney. even luxury bags is included, right? It's part of
100%.
it. Because right now people are buying those branded
Oh yeah.
bags, right? So
Yes,
they
I
are part
remember
of it.
that meeting with your parents because your parents are so wealthy that they have all these branded. No, it's true because
Yeah.
there are a lot of people who value a lot of things
Mm-hmm.
differently, right? And so you can certainly gift in your will or during your lifetime to people who you think would appreciate it.
Mm.
Yeah, I think that's all the questions.
So
Do you
thank
have
you for
any?
having us. This was
Yeah,
very nice.
absolutely. This has been great. This is fun. If anyone else has any questions, just reach out to us via email, give us a call. We're more than that. We're here to help you. We're not here to, like I said, to preach or anything. It's really for you to come see us whenever you're ready. There's no pressure, right? But I do urge you to get these documents in place for yourselves and your family.
Do you have anything to say, Kuya?
Attorney, one last question before
I
you
know.
go. So if, for example, Greg has a property in other provinces, do he make a will from outside the an attorney outside the province of Manitoba, or you can cover it?
We can
It's
cover it.
we can cover it because there's reciprocal jurisdiction. So especially if it's in Canada, we can register probate. It's called resealing in different provinces. So you have authority in that province, right?
Okay. Yeah.
There's some countries that we have reciprocal acts with. Unfortunately, the Philippines is not one of them.
Oh.
But that's why there's that conflict of laws. So yeah, we'd have to look at it. Like I said, each person's going to be different. The only people who will really know how much people are really worth is Attorney Mamukid and I.
Yeah.
We would know when we see you, millionaire, billionaire. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm kidding.
Attorney, lahat ng nanonood ngayon, maraming pera yan kasi
Like I tell you, I know
Yeah.
for sure. I have no doubt. If you sit down and really think about it, calculate how much you think you really are worth when you're not here anymore.
Mhm.
I will bet my bottom dollar you are above what you owe. 100%. Unless you are absolutely sagad na.
Yeah.
But that's very rare, especially in our community because you know why? Because I know we're buying houses. I know we're buying cars. I know we're buying, without immigrants, our economy stalls,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
Let's be honest. You go out to the outlet mall, who do you see?
Attorney, kaya pala familiar kayo.
Ano?
Kaya pala familiar kayo sa akin. Nakita kita doon.
Yeah, there you go. You see me with my hat and then there in the bargain bin, looking for the latest and greatest. That's good. That's
Yeah,
good.
that's right.
No,
yeah.
no, it's this is something like I said. Seriously, going back to it, this is something that is, I think, absolutely necessary for everyone. Doesn't matter what lot in life you are. What age you are, right? As long as you're age of majority to do, and as long as you have the capacity to do it, please do so.
All right. Thank you so much po. And as you guys, as everyone know na, I think 90% of Steinbach people, yung lahat ng bumibili ng real estate sa Steinbach, PKF ang lawyers. And this is a big opportunity right now for everyone to get educated sa mga will and testament kasi meron na silang property. So right now, this is the right time to get their own will and testament.
So right time. And before we leave, I know Greg, you had mentioned someone had kind of wanted me to bring up the SPA,
Yes.
the special power of attorney. That is also can be very complicated because some people say, oh, I just need this document to be notarized and then I'll send it back home.
Mhm.
There's a whole process where perhaps it needs to be certified by the province of Manitoba and then basically
The embassies.
authenticated by the consulate, the Philippine consulate in
Yeah.
Toronto.
Yeah.
So do not just rely on what your kapatid or pansin said in the Philippines. Do let us know, call us so we can direct you with the right road, because the worst thing that you can do, you'll send something back home and it gets rejected and you got to start all over again.
And this is Yung
That's a very
SPA,
good process.
yung SPA is one of the requirements for SSS, right?
Yes, for the
Yes.
SS pension. Trust me,
So-
that's very common. Lupa, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's other bank accounts back home that you still have valid. You need it. You're gonna need the SPA, the special power of attorney. But the special power of attorney is just for that limited purpose lang. That's
Mhm.
it. There's no other. They can't go start selling property. It's just for that
Yes.
one purpose that you want them to do.
Okay. I'm so sorry. May
No,
mga
it's okay.
follow-up
That's
question.
May follow-up question. Ay,
So-
Greg, magbabayad tayo ng overtime
Yeah,
nito.
let's start. No longer free.
Yeah. Attorney, pag,
And it's premium because it's after 7 o'clock now.
okay.
So, ang question ay kapag nag-change ng property, need din i-change ba yung last will? Let's say if there's more property na nabili, kailangan ba i-change?
So let's say you left property A to son 1, property B to son 2, right? And then you sell property B during your lifetime, right?
Mhm.
For whatever reason,
Mhm.
and you die, the gift is no longer there. So you don't
Mhm.
have to change your will, right?
Okay.
Okay, but if you intend to change the gifting of that will, then of the property, then you should change it.
Okay.
Yeah.
And regarding sa SPA, how much is the SPA?
That's discretionary. There's no because each SPA, I will guarantee you, will be different from the other.
Yeah.
I've drafted in my career SPAs that are one-liners to 3, 4, 5, 10 pages.
10 pages. That's a lot.
So, depende
yeah.
kung ano yung papagawa mo doon sa
Correct.
tao, di ba?
Because I've had the longest one I remember I've ever had for SPA was specific bank accounts. So we had to name every bank of the Philippine Islands, like that. Account numbers, branches, because they want it back home.
Oh, okay. That
See,
makes sense.
because you're dealing with different entities sa Pinas, and
Mhm.
each one unfortunately requires different things, right? It gets very, very detailed.
And
Especially
Attorney,
the SSS pension. The SS pension is one that you have to be very careful with, right?
Yeah.
And and then you also have the e-big funds that I know that
pag-ibig,
yeah, trust me, that too it gets complicated.
Ikaw, Kuya Ray, di ba SS ka ba o GS? Ano yung
GIS?
yes,
Yeah.
yes. Hindi, matagal ko nang hindi binayaran yung Greg eh.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wag mo na sabihin dito.
No, hindi na kasi attorney, tama ba to? Kasi yung thinking ko kaya nga mas kung halimbawa you're earning here kasi nagtatrabaho naman tayo, no. Kung kaya mo lang mag-invest na lang dito than in the Philippines para hindi mas komplikado pag namayapa ka, di ba? Why not invest here na lang or bili ng piece of land here? Tama bang advice yan?
Here's I'm gonna give you the lawyer comment.
Yeah.
Anong status nyo dito? Citizen or PR?
Pag halimbawa citizen kasi pag dito na tayo mamatay, di ba? So
right. Then you just invest here.
yeah, yan yung nasa mind ko, Greg. Kaya hindi ko binayaran yung GSSS ko na. Kasi since I left the Philippines, my mother always reminds me to pay. I said, we're migrating. At that time, we were still in the Middle East. Yeah. And I was telling her, we will be migrating anyway. And I don't think, like sinabi niyo, attorney, kanina, kung 5 years niyo lang titirhan doon or babakasyonan, hindi ka naman every 6 months babakasyon. Di ba? So parang wag na lang, ibigay mo na lang yung land. Parang ganun, di ba?
Yeah,
unless it's so
you
big.
have to be careful kasi and a lot of our newcomers, of course, right, are only PR, wala pang citizen.
Yeah.
You have to, because remember, you're still considered a Filipino citizen. You haven't renounced it. You haven't become Canadian just because you're PR.
Yes.
Those are factors we have to look at for you to determine that you're not doing anything offside. In here, dito, and doon, right? So that's why I said every person we meet is just different. In fact, sometimes we see things that we've never seen before, which makes this work the best, right? Because you learn more things and you're like, I never.
Attorney, baka isang case ng San Miguel Beer hindi natin kukulangin pag
Oh, you're gonna need a whole
Yeah.
truckload.
I can imagine 20 years ng practice mo.
You're gonna need a whole
Iba-ibang
truckload.
story.
Yeah, you're gonna need a whole truckload. No, whole factory.
Yeah.
Call in Red Horse too, not just San Miguel. And then we'll bring in the Ginebra as well too. So then we'll make it all. We'll make it all. I'm joking. This is fun. This is fun.
Mhm. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. So if there's anything else, don't hesitate to. I know some people are here or embarrassed. Don't be like that around us. We're here to answer your questions.
So, I think wala nang
May question pa, Greg?
Oh, wait. Oh, ito. Every time, wait. Sabi, can we buy properties sa Pinas as a Canadian citizen?
Oh,
Yes.
Yeah. 100%.
Remember, you're taxed on that.
Yeah, then you remember, that's right. You declare that you own foreign property.
You're
Right?
declaring here. Dito
Yeah.
ba? Okay.
Yeah, sa CRA.
CRA will
Sasabihin mo sa
require
CRA.
Same with your SSS pension, you're taxed on that.
That's also income.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that
that's
may
all
be
income.
that's that may
foreign
be
income.
invest here because you would have better tax planning strategies here as opposed to the Philippines. So one thing to think about.
And Ren we had never really even touched on that. If you are, let's say you are well to do, right? Part of the estate and testamentary planning will actually bring in tax planning at the same time. You see? Because we could only talk generalities tonight, right? If you really, let's say you own a business or you're a partner in something or you have, right, other investments, those changes what we would describe for you, what we think is the best thing for you to do or how to do it.
There's a follow-up question. Sorry.
No, this always happens, Greg. Don't apologize.
Are we going to pay property tax here or in the Philippines? Or in the Philippines.
Both. It could be both.
Both,
It could be.
you'd pay both.
Yeah.
You would pay wherever the property is, you pay the municipality the property tax.
No matter what, right? Where the
No matter
land
what.
is. And then you might be paying taxes here if you earn income off that land, that property.
Okay. That ito parang stigma. Example, let's say the SSS or
GSIS.
That one, or pension. Let's say pension.
Yeah, just say pension.
Yeah, in pension, it doesn't go here. It stays in the Philippines. Do you have to declare that here, even though it's not coming?
Have you redeemed it, or are you just keeping it in the bank account?
Nasa bank account. Like
You
not
still
me.
have to declare
Just
it.
example.
Because at some point, the reason why you have to declare it is because at some point you're going to try and redeem it, right? You're just not going to leave it there,
Yeah.
especially if it's a large amount.
So
Best case scenario, to be honest with you, is to declare any and all income. Because if you get audited and let's say you're just unlucky and your file is pulled, they'll be able to look at that stuff because you have to declare it.
Attorney, kaya ako sinabi yung kanina na statement kasi nanonood yung CRA.
They're always looking. Nothing that you cannot hide from CRA.
That's true.
They monitor all money.
Worldwide
It's like-
income, Greg.
it's like NSA. Follow-up question about the pension. Paano kung yung pension sa Pinas ini-spend?
You're still paying for it. It's still income.
Still income.
What's taxed in Canada is income,
Yeah.
and that is being taxed. You should declare that here.
How about, attorney, kung yung proceeds nung pension mo sa Pilipinas directly po binibigay mo na dun sa halimbawa pamangkin mo or kapatid mo?
Same
Still,
answer.
you're still
Same,
spending it.
okay, yeah.
Because
Yeah.
it's sa pangalan nyo, right? Yung
Nasa
pension.
pangalan, yeah. Okay. So taxable worldwide income.
Okay.
We just
Yes.
don't know what rates you're being taxed at, right? That would be specific to each. But yeah, no, any income that's coming passive, right? That's coming your way in your name, you should declare it.
Okay. Kuya, mapaupahan mo.
So whoever your tax preparer is there out there, sa Steinbach or your accountant, remember they ask you the question, or even if you do the TurboTax computer program, they have these questions, right? So just don't bypass them. Think long and hard before you answer them because you declare that, right? You swear it.
Yeah.
Kaya Greg, dahan-dahan sa pagpicture sa Instagram ng mga property sa Pilipinas.
Wala eh. Walang picture man.
Yeah.
I think, wala na ba? Wait.
So attorney, yung sinabi niyo pala kaninang yung testamentary documents na i-calculate na rin yung tax. Pag the moment na may nangyari na sa'yo, doon na magiging applicable yung tax, di ba? Na kinalculate.
Well, it depends. We could plan it that way, right? See, you could, this is where if it is a complicated estate, we would actually get an accountant involved to see what is the best tax planning and testamentary planning at the same time. Right. But if you're talking about just your average normal family or husband and wife, we don't need to take that step, right? Because we could basically distribute it. Yeah. But if you have, like, you run a business or you have a lot of para and you're getting taxed on it now, today, you could begin to structure things where you defer taxes later. You see? And that's why, like I said, this is money well spent, because if you're doing this now, you may
can
be
manage
saving
it
in the
now.
long run. Yeah.
Attorney, ang hirap, di ba ang hirap kumita, pero mas mahirap palang
It's harder to die. Yeah? Dying is very expensive.
Just die, and then it's a lot simpler. Remember, look, we all know why. I know why my parents came here. I know you probably, both of you came here. Everyone in the audience came here for one reason: is that you're working hard for yourself, but you're definitely working for your kids, right? So you made the sacrifice, you made the tough decision to come over here to help family, right? Yourself. So make sure that when the time comes, when you're not here, that you have that instruction in place, so there's no mess. Because we lawyers love messes, because we clean it up. We get paid to clean it up. So we don't make money planning. Our fees are capped. If there's a mess, it's hourly, and then we know how much that's really going to take. Right? Like the one without a will, how much it's going to cost you. We know that's a mess, right? We got to clean that up.
Yeah. That's right.
Instead of fixed fee, we're now, it could expand 10 times higher, right? So, So I guess we'll leave it at that then. Is that all right? Or is there more questions?
I think that's it. Yeah, I think that's
so
it.
Who do I send the bill to?
Kay Vice President.
No, I tell you what. Summer in the city, when we come by, you just give us one barbecue stick and we're happy.
Oh, sounds good.
Then we're happy.
Attorney, Greg, magpa-beer ka kina attorney para may discount tayo.
Let me put it this way. I won't share it here, but I do have a special rate for Steinbach.
Thank you, attorney.
Yeah, I'm very cognizant, and I recognize that the prices I've raised are high, but I make sure that you will receive what you is for a good price.
Nakuha ko yun, right? I think nakuha ko yun, right, attorney?
You're talking to a lawyer, right? I'll never give my position.
But overall, thank you so much, attorney Sosida and attorney Mamukod, for this time. All the knowledge that you shared sa amin and sa lahat ng taga Steinbach or even outside Steinbach, because may mga followers ang SEMFA outside Steinbach like Mitchell, Luminort, Neverville, and all up to Winkler and Morden.
Greg, we're all over the place, right?
Yes. So thank you so much for the knowledge, and I hope we can have another
any legal topic. We are more than happy to give our thoughts, and then just have a discussion, right?
Yes.
If hopefully, what, if you want to do an in-person one, I like that. I like in-person because I actually get to see the audience. Yes. And to be honest with you, if I were able to see the audience, so the audience got off very lucky this evening, I would actually ask the audience questions. And then I would actually, at that point in time, it's like already a client meeting, because I will be able to basically assist maybe one family saying, okay, this is what you need. Mm-hmm. And then it illustrates how it works, like physically, logistically.
Yeah.
Right. So
Yeah.
we are happy to help out our kababayan. So
Yes. We still
especially in
have
the Southeast, we're biased.
yes. Me and the officers, we still have few months in our positions. We will do another session. So,
Anytime.
Pe-
Anytime.
Pero Greg, sabi na attorney nga, in person daw.
oo.
Di ba? At, di ba?
Yes, in person. Saan gagawa tayo dapat? Kasi,
Ha?
si Kuya Buboy, he lives in Edmonton.
Yeah.
So, kailangan lumipat ka dito.
That's okay. I mean, if we could do hybrid, hybrid, in person and virtual at the same time.
Yeah. But yeah, thank you so much. And also sa PKF, thank you so much for
For
always
being our
helping
sponsor.
us,
our
being
pleasure.
our sponsor. And of course, thank you for like we always have questions. Sempa always have questions about legalities, and thank you for giving like answers without any hesitation. And that is a big parang blessed. We feel blessed kasi we don't, to be honest, we don't know what are the legalities when it comes to organization. And when we have concerns, and when we do meetings and when we have concerns, dun namin nalalaman na ito pala yun because of your knowledge and expertise, and that is very parang
Thank you.
good talaga sa amin. Thank you so
course.
much po. Before we end po, we're gonna play again the sponsorship. Oops. So, before mag-end tayo, just to remind and sa mga kapwa Pilipino natin, High Life and Senfa ay naghumingi po ng tulong sa inyo sa mga new temporary foreign workers po natin. Kailangan po nila ng beds, mattresses, and dining tables and couch. And of course, kung nagpapalit po kayo ng mga, kailangan meron kayo extra winter clothing, they are also asking for help sa community po natin, sa mga bagong dating na mga Pilipino. And please coordinate sa Immigration Settlement Coordinator, si Ate Marinel Santos. Ito po yung email niya, marinel.santos@highlife.com. Coordinate na lang po sa pick-up. And of course, let's not forget our music festival. This is the first ever Sempa will be hosting a music festival. We have 10 performers sa May 13, 2023, 4:30 p.m. to 10 p.m. sa Pat Porter Active Living Center. Sempa members from 2022 and 2023, meron libre ang entrance. Free raffle prizes sa mga members. Please bring cash for raffle tickets para kung gusto nyo pang madaming tickets na magkaroon. And of course, meron tayong 50-50, and of course we also have vendors sa event na to. We are still looking for vendors for this event. Please do contact us kapag gusto nyo po magbenta. We have few requirements just to follow the health regulation po ng Manitoba, and just message us. And we have performers 10, CC Wit Band, The Father and Son, Micah, basa mo ba ko yan?
Hindi. Maliit sa screen ko eh.
Ako din.
Pero Greg, clarification lang. Yung music festival is only exclusive to members of SEMFA, right?
No, actually they are open. Open siya, pero
priority yung members.
Basically,
kasi first come first serve, di ba? Kasi pag napuno yung na-reach natin yung capacity ng venue,
hindi na pwede.
Hindi na pwedeng
hindi natin kayang gawin yung nangyayari sa holiday party na we're gonna use the whole building.
Yeah.
So this one, it's a kung
First come,
pwede
first serve
pang,
po.
yes, first come, first serve. Basta, pag member kayo ng SEMPA, mayroon kayo libreng tickets. Pag hindi kayo member ng SEMPA, you have to buy tickets po. So,
Doon na
yun
sa
lang po.
entrance.
Sa entrance na.
Yeah.
And sa mga pupunta po, please bring cash kasi malalaki po ang raffle prizes natin.
At saka yung 50-50. Yeah.
50-50 talaga yung pinakasikat.
Yeah.
And another thing for next month info sessions, we have home insurance. So this time we have Gem Insurance and Red River Mutual. So ang maganda dito ay tayo, di ba, nagsimula tayo sa mortgage. Ngayon about sa will and sa legalities. Ngayon about home insurance. This is very important right now because spring ngayon. So alam mo nangyayari sa spring, nagbaha, di ba?
Yeah.
So you have to know kung ano ba talaga ang policy mo. So next month malalaman natin kung ano ba ang dapat nating alamin o paano natin kailangan tignan yung home insurance policy natin. So make sure to book off yung May 26, Friday, 6:30. Ito 6:30 p.m. tayo dito. And this is 6:30. And
ang daming kailangang paghandaan ng ating mga kababayan, Greg.
Yes.
Kasi yung will kailangan maghanda.
Maghanda-handa sila.
Yung insurance ng bahay. last month yung mortgage.
Lahat yung yung parang nila-line up natin this year. Lahat ng
kailangan nilang malaman para
kasi palabas na naman tayo sa
term natin.
Sa term natin. So we're taking this opportunity to help our kababayans sa mga ganitong knowledge kasi it's very essential right now, especially sa mga nangyayari sa mga tao right now, sa financial, sa inflation, of course, sa nangyayari sa baha. Madami, actually last year madami yung binaha, di ba? So right now explain nila yung mga policy, and May 1st we're gonna promote or we're gonna share o anong tag doon. Ilalabas na namin, i-announce na namin ang bursary program. We are looking for 3 newly graduates this year, 2023.
Ng grade 12.
Yeah. Na gustong makakuha ng $500 each $500 each student. And excuse me po.
Kuya Mike.
Excuse me po. Tapos sa May 1st din i-announce din natin ang yung new set of officers na kailangan natin for upcoming term. Kasi
open na natin yung nomination nila.
Kasi kung hindi nila alam, this is our last term. So we are looking for the new set of
last year na natin.
Last year na namin po. So we need your help. We really need your help to find the next officers of this. Kasi we want to continue, gusto po namin ma-continue ang SEMPA. Kasi ang SEMPA po ay very strong sa community ng Stanback. We are well respected ng ibang lahi. And we need your support. We need new set of officers. And of course, we are doing our part. And I think we can only stay for 1 term. Unfortunately, but please help. Please.
Greg, parang gumagawa ka ng
please nga
Okay.
Ne.
Power of attorney yan, ha?
In serious note, we need your help.
Yeah.
We need your help para sa next set of officers. Just give us even one president or even president. Then we will ask that president to make a team or to make officers like us. What happened to us? Ganun na lang, right? But we really want to Sempa to continue para because there's a lot of Filipino newcomers will be coming. So, and ano pa ba ang
Sobrang seryoso ka. Okay. Well,
meron pa tayo. Oh, yun. We need volunteers.
Yung bursary program natin pala, Greg.
Yes.
Yeah, emphasize lang natin na yung mga interesadong mag-apply, ang kailangan nyo lang po ay mag-volunteer sa mga events ng SEMFA para maka-qualify kayo kasi anyway, ipopost yan ni Greg sa May 1st.
Yes.
Yung mga requirements nila. Basta it's about volunteerism. So mag-volunteer po kayo para maka-qualify kayo sa bursary program.
It's very easy. Very easy.
Yeah.
Easy $500, promise. Sana dati meron.
Yeah, kaya salamat sa mga
Ako.
sponsors natin katulad kina attorney kanina.
Yes. Kasi without them we cannot do anything. We cannot give grants or bursary. But yeah, we need volunteers sa music fest. Please help us to have a successful music festival. We need support, and of course we need manpower. Also, we need volunteers sa summer in the city. And as everyone knows, summer in the city is very busy. Will be busy and very masakit sa katawan. Anyway,
watch out po yung post ng SEMFA ni Greg about sa kung paano mag-volunteer sa especially sa summer in the city.
Yes, we need your help, please.
Kailangan namin kayo. Kailangan namin kayo.
We still need our legs. Our legs, our back. So, we need manpower, please. Please, nakakailang please na ako. Pero talaga, to be honest, like straight up, we need everyone to help us.
Please support us.
Please support us po.
Kasi yung kikitain natin sa mga events na to, lalo na sa Summer in the City, mapupunta naman sa community natin.
Yes, it's gonna go out.
Kailangan namin kayo.
Family day, it's gonna like all the money na makukuha sa events.
At sa holiday party.
So
at pag na-reach natin yung quota, baka si Moira ma-invite natin. So,
diba?
Ma-invite natin si Moira.
Tapos si Kuya Ray nasayaw.
Siyempre, basta tayong dalawa, di ba?
Hindi na kaya ng katawan ko. Hindi. Kanina pa ako
Hindi na natin kasi depende yan kay Kuya Christian eh. Depende. Kasi siya naman yung magte-train, di ba?
Yeah. So, kaya nyo na yan. Yung katawan ko hindi na kaya. Bumibigay na. Pero thank you so much for everyone who watched and always supporting us. And this is a great interaction sa atin. And we don't know who's watching, but this is really good kasi we get pag nakita nyo kami sa labas, say hi lang. We don't eat people, especially Mr. F. He doesn't eat people, so please
at saka
say hi to us.
Yung problema ko, yung iba hindi ko kilala. So, pahay lang pag nakita nyo ako. Tapos,
please hi to Mr. F. He is the Vice President of SEMFA. And napaka-friendly niyan. Baka mabigyan kayo ng balato dyan.
Basta kita-kita tayo sa Music Fest and Summer in the City.
Yes. Thank you so much, everyone. And once again.
And Greg, salamat kina attorney.
Yes.
Wow, ang dami nating
Marami ako natutunan.
Mind-blowing.
Yeah. So that's it for now. Thank you, Kuya. And
good night.
Until next month.
Happy weekend, everyone.
Yeah. Happy weekend.
Thank you.
Good night. Yung bubble